billahi samii alim minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. So as the announcement has been made that my topic for the presentation is SAİD Nursi on Imaniyaat, some reflection. I shall better try to, in order to save time, just to focus myself to the paper which I have left on this things. SAİD Nursi throughout his career endeavored to ensure firmness of faith in oneness and omnipotence of Allah. He attempted to concretize this belief by transforming the nature of divine invitation into conviction and pondering towards unfus and the afar. With Quran as the main source of inspiration and reference, he realized that the strategy to achieve this goal was embodied in emphasizing the unflinching faith in the basic concepts of Tawheed, Risale-i, and Akhirah in such a way that both qalb, that is heart, and conscience, that is intellect of the modern man are satisfied. He opines, I quote, if luminaries such Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani, Shah Nakshband and Imam Rabbani were alive today, they would expend all their efforts in strengthening the truths of belief and tenets of Islam. Man cannot live without bread, but can live without food. If through Almighty Allah's mercy, there is a way to rise to those truths in 40 minutes instead of 40 days, it surely is not sensible to remain indifferent to it. In order to understand SAİD Nursi's viewpoint on one cannot afford to lose sight of the developments emerging around you. The SAİD witnessed the rise of new ideologies, belief system, cultural and political hegemony of the West, control of the Muslim countries through the formation of new Western-oriented nationalistic state systems, materialism, all leading to the psycho-spiritual crisis of the humanity at large. The natural, physical, and other sciences, which are patronized by Islam, were portrayed by some misleading personalities as being opposed. The sciences, which are reconciled with Islam, were deliberately being used against it. They were endeavoring to show that Islam, the religion of civilization, was opposed to progress and technology. Society had begun to embrace multiple gods, hiding them under the umbrella of ideologies such as atheism or existentialism. I quote, and certainly many philosophers have worshipped gods in some form. Reason saw life as a god, while Darwin sanctified evolution. Hegel thought that the absolute supreme was God, while Marx recognized dialectic materialism as God. Others are society, which became sanctified, sexuality which Freud consecrated, the individual which Sartre made into a false God. All these are nothing other than names given to acts and events pertaining to society, life, man, and the universe which God has created. All the philosophers, psychologists, and artists increasingly became aware of the basic problem of modern humanity, namely that faith had been lost. They were unable to identify anything substantial that might replace it. Titus Bulgar summarizes the argument thus. I quote it, the sun-centered system bears a clear symbolism, for it situates the light sources at the center. However, the rediscovery of Copernicus of this system did not bring any new spiritual way. It was in fact the popularization of an esoteric truth to a dangerous extent. Religious beliefs have no organic place in the system. In place of pointing out to man's intellect the ways it could surpass itself and ensuring the evaluating of everything within the extraordinariness of the cosmos, it merely opened up the way to materialistic Prometheanism, which was not even human, let alone superhuman. The age of enlightenment has postulated independent judgment and reason as the highest norm. It preached political equality without seeing that political equality could not lead to the realization of the brotherhood of man if it was not accompanied by a fundamental change in the social economic organization. Socialism, and especially Marxism, has stressed the necessity for social and economic changes and neglected the necessity of the inner change in human beings, without which economic change can never lead to the good society. Karl Popper, writing about the rise of imperialism after the Industrial Revolution, believes that, I quote him, the naturalist revolt against God, which preceded the historian's revolt, replaced God with nature. Apart from this, almost everything remained the same. Naturalism replaced theology, natural laws replaced divine laws, natural will and power replaced divine will and power, and finally, natural selection replaced the divine order and judgment. Naturalist determinism replaced the theological determinism, that is, nature's being omnipotent and omniscient, replaced God as being omnipotent and omniscient. Unquote. The appearance of SAİD Nursi's ideas coincided with the proliferation of materialist writing in the late Ottoman Empire. Subsequent to the Tanzimat, various political, literary, and philosophical ideologies have begun to flow in from abroad, impacting considerably on Ottoman intellectual life. Among these, materialism, Darwinism, Freudianism, naturalism, socialism, and atheism left profound negative effects on many Ottoman intellectuals. After the foundation of the Turkish Republic, the materialism, Freudianism, and existentialism made their influence felt on the policy makers of the new state, who attributed Turkey's problems to Islam without realizing that Western man was also in spiritual crisis. After the collapse of Ottomans and the foundation of the Turkish Republic, religion was duly excised from public life, while materialism, secularism, and atheism gradually began to take root. It was a period in which every sort of religious enterprise was labeled as a reactionary movement. Religiously minded people who performed worship, even privately, were disturbed when both reading and teaching of the Quran were forbidden. Blameless religious scholars were sent to the scaffold due to unfounded suspicions, and severe penalties were inflicted for the teaching of religion. Yes, it was a time when the religious schools and Sufi meeting places were closed down, which for hundreds of years had been the watchmen of this nation's spiritual life, honor, and all they hold sacred. When all religious instruction was prohibited, and when some sheikhs and religious scholars were intimidated into selling themselves and accepting various positions.
Dr. Manzur, I was told that we have to finish early today because at 6, in 10 minutes the bus will be departure, so therefore we have to, can you wrap up?
I will finish it within my 10 minutes. I won't take any extra time. Such condition is present in Nursi with a golden opportunity in which to develop his discourse and aim to reconstruct society on the foundation of true belief in the Quran. The secular primary education in the Republican education system, which recognized no place for religion and which was based on a positivist worldview, was totally at odds with the moral universe of Islam, and that Nursi was provided with fertile ground on which to sow his ideas concerning the total involvement of the individual in Islam. One of the vital themes of Nursi's Risale is his emphasis on the essential difference between Iman and Islam, and on their interdependence as a means for human salvation. In contrast to certain classical scholars who argued that belief is static, Nursi is one with the unified theologians in the assertion that belief is subject to increase or decrease. Again, as with much of his general discourse, Nursi's writings on the subject are didactic and quasi-ceremonial rather than academically theological. He writes not to prove some arcane point of kalam, but to guide and illustrate. since man himself and the world in which he lives are being continuously renewed, he needs constantly to renew his belief. For in reality, each individual human being consists of many individuals. He may be considered as a different individual to the number of years of his life, or rather to the number of the days or even the hours of his life. For since a single individual is subject to time, he is like a model, and each passing day clothes him in the form of another individual.
Dr. Manzur, your time is over actually. 10 minutes is over.
Yes, sir?
10 minutes is over. You said you're not going to exceed your time, 10 minutes is over.
So if you allow me, for 30 seconds I would like
Because
to
they are actually,
I would like to
the
read out the
say the
conclusion.
bus. I think that
Conclusion only I would like to read it out.
I understand.
Just 30 seconds. This is just the conclusion of a paper which I could not basically make, presentation also I could not make due to the much paucity of the time. Implicit in General Nursi discourse on Islamic orthopraxy is a notion that external submission to the will of Allah is predicable on the possession of true, sustained and constantly the effort to believe, and that externally of Islam, the practice of offering salah, observing sound and the like are devoid of meaning without it. Belief in turn must be based on investigation and introspection, on deliberation and contemplation, and without belief the submission is of little value. Thus SAİD Nursi emerged as a modern thinker whose contribution to the dissemination of Quranic teachings in general and the revival of belief in particular is highly significant. Born at a time when the internal problem is both complex and apparently insurmountable, and external challenges to the Muslim world were many, he made it his goal to reintroduce the teachings of the Quran to a generation for whom the truths and realities of Islam had fallen into desuetude. Realizing that in order to do this, he must equip himself with all the tools and accessories of modern scholarship. He added a mastery of philosophy and the modern sciences to his already considerable expertise in the classical Muslim fields of theology and exegesis. Thank you, sir.